High Commander Marcus stood at the massive viewing window of the Imperial flagship Eternal Dawn, his gray uniform perfectly pressed as he watched the stars streak by. The massive ship, nearly 5 miles long, moved through space with the grace of a deadly predator. Yet today, something felt different. The usual confidence that filled the bridge had been replaced by an odd tension. "High Commander, we have the full report ready," said Officer Thomas, approaching with a datapad. His footsteps echoed across the polished black floor of the bridge. Marcus took the pad without turning away from the window. The Empire had conquered thousands of species across 3 galactic arms. Each conquest followed the same pattern: discover, intimidate, conquer, and rule. But as his eyes moved across the report, his thick eyebrows drew together in confusion. "This can't be right," he muttered, finally turning to face Thomas. "Run the scans again." "Sir, we've already run them 3 times," Thomas replied, his voice steady, but his fingers nervously adjusting his collar. "The readings are accurate." The data showed a newly discovered species called humans. They had spread across 57 star systems, which wasn't unusual for a young spacefaring race. Their ships used simple fusion drives and basic shield technology. Their weapons were mostly kinetic and low-grade energy-based. By all measures, they should have been an easy target for the Empire. But something wasn't adding up. "Show me their colony patterns," Marcus ordered, walking to the main display screen. The bridge crew quickly brought up a 3-dimensional map of human space. As the display lit up, Marcus's experienced eyes noticed what others had missed. Every single human world was fortified. Not just their main worlds, but even the smallest mining outposts had defensive installations that could rival some of the Empire's military bases. Their ship patterns didn't match any known trade routes. Instead, they moved like patrol groups, maintaining constant coverage of their territory. "Get me the historical data," Marcus ordered. "When did they achieve spaceflight?" The answer made him freeze. "Just 70 years ago, sir." Marcus ran his hand through his graying hair. Most species took centuries to spread across even a dozen star systems. Humans had claimed and fortified 57 systems in just 70 years. The implications were troubling. "Sir," a young officer called out from her station, "we're detecting unusual energy readings from their outer colonies." Marcus walked to her station, looking at the readings. The energy signatures were massive but inconsistent. Either their technology was extremely inefficient, or they're hiding something, he whispered to himself. The War Council meeting that evening was exactly what Marcus expected. 12 high-ranking officers sat around a black table, discussing the humans like they were simply another conquest waiting to happen. "Their technology is primitive." General Reed laughed, his metals clinking as he leaned back in his chair. "Their ships would barely survive a single hit from our main weapons." "They've only just discovered FTL travel," another officer added. "They're practically children playing with toys." Marcus remained quiet, studying the holographic display of human space floating above the table. "Children don't build fortresses," he thought. "Children don't patrol their territories with military precision. And children certainly don't expand through space with such calculated efficiency." "I recommend caution," he finally said, his voice cutting through the confident chatter. "Something about their development pattern is unusual." "Unusual?" Reed scoffed. "The only unusual thing is how easy this conquest will be. One battle group could probably take their entire territory." Before Marcus could argue further, an alert sounded through the ship. All eyes turned to the communication officer who had just rushed into the room. "Sirs," the officer said, trying to catch his breath, "we've received a transmission. A human diplomatic vessel is requesting a meeting." The council members exchanged amused looks. This was normal. Many species tried to negotiate when they discovered the Empire. It always ended the same way, with their submission. But as Marcus looked at the tactical display one more time, noting how every human world was positioned like pieces on a massive chessboard, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. These humans, whoever they were, had prepared for war before they even met their first alien species. The question was, the human diplomatic ship was small compared to the Eternal Dawn. Its simple design reminded Marcus of ancient sailing vessels from his homeworld. Functional, without any decorative elements. Like everything else about the humans, it seemed surprisingly practical. They're requesting permission to dock, Officer Thomas reported from his station. Their ship carries only 4 crew members. Marcus watched the external cameras as the vessel approached. No weapons were visible on its hull, but those strange energy readings were present here too. The ship's power output seemed to fluctuate randomly, defying the laws of physics as the Empire understood them. "Grant them permission," Marcus ordered. "Have security teams standing by, but keep them out of sight. We don't want to appear hostile." The docking procedure was flawless. The human ship matched speed and position with precision that suggested far more advanced technology than their seemingly basic design indicated. Marcus's suspicions grew stronger. In the meeting chamber, Marcus sat with General Reed and 3 other high-ranking officers. They waited as the human delegation was escorted in. The leader of the group was a tall man in a simple blue uniform with minimal insignia. His name was Admiral James Walker, and his calm demeanor immediately caught Marcus's attention. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Dawn," Marcus said, using the standard diplomatic greeting. "I am High Commander Marcus of the Galactic Empire." Walker's face remained perfectly neutral as he took his seat. "Thank you for receiving us, High Commander. We'll keep this brief." Reed's expression darkened at the informal response, but Marcus raised a hand to keep him quiet. Something in Walker's tone suggested this wasn't going to be a typical diplomatic meeting. "We've been watching your empire's expansion for some time," Walker continued, his voice steady and clear. "We've studied your conquest patterns, analyzed your military doctrine, and examined your treatment of conquered species." Marcus felt the temperature in the room seem to drop. This wasn't how first contact meetings usually went. "You've come to submit to Imperial rule?" Reed asked, his voice thick with condescension. Walker's slight smile sent a chill down Marcus's spine. "No, General. We've come to give you a warning. Change course. The Empire's expansion stops here. You don't want humanity as an enemy." The Imperial officers stared in shock for a moment before Reed burst out laughing. "Is this some kind of joke? Your species barely has functional faster-than-light travel. Your ships are primitive. Your weapons are centuries behind ours." "Are they?" Walker asked quietly. He placed a small device on the table, and a hologram appeared, showing a map of Imperial space. "This is your current territory. Would you like to see what it will look like if you force us into conflict?" Before anyone could respond, the map changed. Huge sections of Imperial space turned red, indicating destroyed or captured systems. The simulation showed human forces moving with impossible speed and precision, cutting the Empire's supply lines and isolating its fleet groups. "This is ridiculous," Reed sputtered. "Your technology can't possibly. Everything you think you know about our capabilities is wrong." Walker interrupted. "Everything you've scanned, everything you've observed. It's what we wanted you to see. This warning is a courtesy, nothing more." Marcus studied Walker's face carefully. There was no pride in his expression, no anger, not even determination. There was only a deep, almost sad certainty. "You're lying," Reed said, standing up. "This is just a desperate bluff from a primitive species." Walker stood as well, straightening his simple uniform. "High Commander Marcus," he said, ignoring Reed completely, "you're different from your colleagues. You saw the patterns in our expansion. You noticed our preparations. Think carefully about what that means." With that, Walker and his delegation left the room, leaving behind a stunned silence. The meeting had lasted less than 10 minutes. "Arrogant primitives," Reed growled. "We should destroy their diplomatic vessel as an example." "No," Marcus said sharply, still staring at the door. "Let them go." As he watched the human ship depart on the view screen later, Marcus couldn't shake Walker's words from his mind. The humans hadn't acted like any species they'd encountered before. They hadn't begged, negotiated, or threatened. They had simply warned the Empire to run. Marcus sat alone in his private quarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing human historical data. It had taken him 3 days to gather this information, calling in favors from contacts throughout the Empire. What he found kept him awake at night. "Computer, show me their earliest recorded conflicts," he commanded, rubbing his tired eyes. The displays filled with images of ancient battles. Humans fighting with simple metal weapons, then with gunpowder, then with machines. Each era showed the same pattern: rapid technological advancement during wartime. A species that turned conflict into progress. "Show me their major wars," he ordered next. The computer displayed 2 massive conflicts they called World Wars. Marcus leaned forward, his face illuminated by the glow of destruction. In just 6 years, humans had gone from basic propeller aircraft to jet engines. From simple rockets to long-range missiles, their technology had leaped forward decades in the span of months. "Sir," Officer Thomas's voice came through the intercom. "The War Council meeting starts in 10 minutes. "Delay it," Marcus replied, not taking his eyes off the displays. "I need more time." He found something even more disturbing in their later history. Humans had developed nuclear weapons before they had computers. They had created tools of mass destruction before they had satellites. Every other known species had developed peaceful technology first, reaching for the stars before building weapons of war. But humans, they had pointed their first advanced weapons at themselves. Computer analyzed their current technology compared to their historical patterns. The analysis made Marcus's blood run cold. The humans' primitive technology didn't match their development curve. Their weapons were too simple, their shields too basic. It was as if they had deliberately stopped advancing, or they're hiding their real technology, he whispered to himself. The door chimed. "Enter," Marcus called out, not bothering to hide his research. Thomas walked in, then stopped short at the sight of all the displays. "Sir, the council is demanding your presence. They're voting on the invasion plan." Marcus stood up slowly, his joints stiff from sitting too long. "Look at this, Thomas," he said, pointing to one display. "Do you know what this shows?" Thomas stepped closer. "Some kind of primitive human vehicle. It's called a tank. The humans invented it during their First World War. By the end of their Second World War, just 30 years later, they had completely redesigned it 5 times, making each version better than the last." Marcus switched to another display. The same with these aircraft. Complete redesigns in months, not years. "But sir, what does this have to do with?" "Everything," Marcus snapped. "Don't you see? We judge species by their current technology, their visible weapons. But humans," he gestured at all the displays, "humans don't invent things like we do. They don't follow careful research paths or slow development cycles. They adapt. They improvise. They take their enemies' weapons and make them better." Thomas looked confused. "But their current ships are so basic." Marcus laughed without humor. "Are they? Or is that what they want us to think?" He brought up the scan data from the human diplomatic vessel. "Look at these power readings. They make no sense because they're meant to make no sense. Everything about their technology is designed to look primitive." "Why would they do that?" "Because they've been preparing for war since before they reached the stars." Marcus walked to the door, his decision made. Their entire civilization is built on conflict. They don't show their real weapons until they need them. In the War Council chamber, Marcus found the other officers already voting on battle plans. General Reed was pointing at a map, outlining how they would crush the human worlds one by one. "The vote is almost unanimous," Reed said as Marcus entered. "We attack their outer colonies in 3 days. That will teach them to threaten the Empire." Marcus looked around the room at his fellow officers, all so confident, all so sure of victory. None of them had seen what he had seen. None of them understood what they were about to face. "There's something you all need to know," he said quietly. But in his heart, he feared it was already too late. "Fleet is in position, General Reed," the communications officer announced on the bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Victory's Crown. 3 massive battle groups hung in space, their weapons charged and ready to attack the small human mining colony below. Marcus stood at the back of the bridge, his protests overruled by the War Council. They had chosen this target carefully, a minor colony with only a small defense fleet. The perfect place to teach humanity a lesson about defying the Empire. "Send the demand for surrender," Reed ordered, smiling confidently. "Let's see how brave they are now." The response came almost immediately. A single line of text: "You were warned." Reed laughed. "Launch the attack. Show them what real power looks like." The Imperial ships moved forward in perfect formation. Their golden hulls gleamed in the light of the system's sun as they prepared to fire their first volley. Marcus watched the tactical display, noting that the human ships, only 12 small vessels, weren't retreating. "Sir," a sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting energy spikes from the human ships." "Ignore it," Reed commanded. "Fire when ready." The Imperial fleet's main guns lit up the darkness of space, sending beams of destructive energy toward the human vessels. Marcus held his breath, waiting for the inevitable explosions. They never came. The energy beams hit something invisible about a kilometer in front of the human ships, spreading out like water hitting glass. The humans had shields, but nothing like the Empire had ever seen before. "Impossible," Reed whispered. Their shield technology was supposed to be primitive. Before anyone could react, the human ships changed. Panels shifted on their hulls, revealing weapons that had been completely hidden from scans. Their simple engines began glowing with power readings that broke the Imperial sensors. "All ships, open fire," Reed shouted, but it was too late. The human vessels moved with impossible speed, their hidden engines pushing them faster than any Imperial ship could track. Their weapons weren't the simple kinetic guns the Empire had detected. They fired beams of energy that cut through Imperial shields like they weren't even there. "Status report," Reed demanded as the bridge shook from a direct hit. "Sir, we've lost contact with Battle Group 2, an officer reported, his voice shaking. Battle Group 3 reports multiple ships heavily damaged. The human weapons, they're going right through our shields." Marcus watched in horror as the tactical display showed Imperial ships being systematically destroyed. The humans weren't just fighting. They were executing a perfect battle plan, as if they had practiced this exact scenario countless times. "Recall all ships," Reed finally ordered, his face pale. "We have to retreat." But the humans had already thought of that. Small devices, previously hidden on nearby asteroids, activated and created some kind of energy field. The Imperial ships faster-than-light drives wouldn't engage. "They trapped us," Marcus realized. "They knew exactly where we would attack and set up everything in advance." The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When it was over, 37 Imperial capital ships had been destroyed or disabled. The human fleet hadn't lost a single vessel. As the bridge crew watched in stunned silence, a transmission came through from the human fleet. Admiral Walker's face appeared on the main screen, looking exactly as calm as he had during the diplomatic meeting. "This was your warning shot," he said simply. "We destroyed your ships but deliberately spared your crews. They are being rescued now by our medical ships." He paused, looking directly at Marcus. "You have 6 hours to begin withdrawing AL Imperial forces from human space. After that, we will no longer show restraint." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in silence. Reed had collapsed into his command chair, staring blankly at the debris field that had been his fleet. "How?" he whispered. "How did we not see their real capabilities?" Marcus walked to the tactical display, watching as human rescue ships began collecting Imperial escape pods. "Because we saw what we wanted to see," he answered quietly. "And they knew we would." In the darkness of space, the human ships resumed their patrol positions, their weapons once again hidden behind shifting panels, waiting to see if the Empire would learn from its mistake, or if humanity would have to teach them an even harsher lesson. The Imperial War Room was in chaos. Red warning lights flashed across every tactical display as reports flooded in from across the Empire. Marcus stood in the center of it all, watching their territory vanish piece by piece. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Centauri Defense Fleet," an officer shouted over the noise. "Human ships just appeared out of nowhere. They're using some kind of new, faster-than-light technology." Another officer rushed forward with a datapad. "The Rigel sector has fallen. They bypassed all our outer defenses. They knew exactly where to hit." Marcus watched as more red dots appeared on the giant strategic map. The humans weren't just attacking. They were performing surgical strikes against key military installations, supply lines, and command centers. Centuries of Imperial defensive planning were falling apart in days. "How are they moving so fast?" General Reed demanded, his uniform wrinkled and his face pale with lack of sleep. "Our fastest ships can't cover this much territory in such a short time." Marcus studied the attack pattern. "Their FTL technology isn't like ours," he said quietly. "We thought their ships were slow because we were looking for the wrong signs. They don't travel through space like we do. They take shortcuts." "Impossible." Reed slammed his fist on a nearby console. "We have the most advanced fleet in known space." "Not anymore," Marcus replied, pointing to a new tactical display. "Look at this footage from the Arcturus battle." The display showed an Imperial heavy cruiser firing its main weapons at a human vessel. The human ship's hull seemed to absorb the energy beams, then redirect them back with twice the power. Their technology wasn't just advanced, it broke the Empire's understanding of physics. "Sir," another officer ran in. "The humans, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. They're showing everyone our defeats." Marcus closed his eyes. Of course they were. This wasn't just a military campaign. It was a message to the entire galaxy. The Empire had ruled through fear and intimidation for centuries. Now humanity was systematically destroying that fear. "The Orion defense line has fallen," someone reported. "They didn't even fight. The garrison surrendered as soon as the human ships appeared." Reed grabbed Marcus's arm. "We have to do something. Launch our reserve fleets. Use our planet killer weapons." "Our planet killers were destroyed in the first hour of their attack," Marcus said, shaking off Reed's grip. "They knew where every single one was hidden. They'd been watching us for years, planning this." A new alert sounded. The main screen showed hundreds of human ships appearing near the Empire's capital worlds. But instead of attacking, they just sat there, weapons ready but not firing. Admiral Walker's face appeared on all screens. He looked exactly the same as he had during their first meeting. Calm, composed, almost sad. "Your military capability has been reduced by 60%, he stated simply. "Your remaining forces are cut off from each other. We control all major supply routes and manufacturing centers. This ends now." Reed sputtered in rage, but Marcus stepped forward. "What are your terms?" "The same as before," Walker replied. "Stop expanding. Stop conquering. Your empire can keep its current territory, minus the military installations we've destroyed. But your days of threatening other species are over." Marcus looked around the war room. The proud Imperial officers who had laughed at humanity's warning now stood silent, their confidence shattered by just 3 days of combat. "And if we refuse?" Reed asked, his voice shaking. Walker's expression didn't change. "Then we finish this. We've only disabled your military targets so far. We can do much worse." The transmission ended. Marcus walked to the strategic display, looking at the remains of the mighty Imperial fleet. Everything they had believed about their superiority had been proven wrong in just a few days. "We never had a chance," he said quietly. "They weren't building an empire. They were building a wall to stop empires like us." In the silence of the war room, the Empire's officers finally understood the truth. They hadn't started a war with humanity. They had forced humanity to end one before it truly began. Marcus sat in his private office aboard the Eternal Dawn, reading through captured human military documents. The Empire's intelligence division had finally managed to decrypt some of their communications, and what they revealed changed everything. "Computer, show me the first document again," he commanded, rubbing his tired eyes. The holographic display showed a human military report, dated 30 years ago, long before they had met any alien species. The title read, "Preparation Protocol for Possible Hostile Extraterrestrial Contact." As he read through it again, Marcus finally understood. The humans hadn't built their military to fight wars. They had built it to prevent them. Every primitive design choice had been carefully planned. Every seemingly basic technology had hidden layers of complexity. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called out. Officer Thomas walked in, carrying a new datapad. "Sir, you need to see this. We've decoded more of their military archives." Marcus took the pad and started reading. His eyes widened as he understood what he was seeing. This is why their ships looked so simple. The documents showed detailed plans for hiding advanced technology. The humans had deliberately designed their ships to appear less threatening, less capable. They had hidden their true weapons behind false hull plates, disguised their advanced sensors as simple communication arrays, and masked their real power output with special devices. "They knew," Marcus whispered. "They knew someone like us would find them eventually." Thomas nodded. "There's more, sir. Look at the dates on these defense plans." Marcus scrolled through the documents. The humans had been preparing for this conflict for decades. They had run countless simulations, planned for every possible scenario. They hadn't just prepared for war. They had prepared to win it completely and decisively. "Show me the casualty reports from our recent battles," Marcus ordered. Thomas brought up another display. The numbers were surprising. Despite the total destruction of Imperial military power, actual death tolls were incredibly low. Human weapons had been precisely targeted to disable rather than destroy. Their entire campaign had been designed to minimize loss of life. "They could have killed us all," Thomas said quietly. "Why didn't they?" Marcus stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the stars. "Because this wasn't about destroying us. This was about teaching us a lesson." He turned back to Thomas. "Read this part here." The document showed a human military directive. "In the event of hostile alien contact, demonstrate overwhelming force while minimizing casualties. The goal is not to destroy potential enemies, but to ensure they never wish to become enemies again." "Sir," Thomas said, "there's one more thing you should see." He handed Marcus another datapad. "We found their original defense planning sessions from before they achieved spaceflight." Marcus read through the transcripts, his expression growing more serious with each line. The humans had looked up at the stars and seen not just possibility, but danger. They had asked themselves a simple question: what if the first aliens they met were hostile? Their answer had been to prepare, not just with weapons and ships, but with an entire strategy of deception and hidden strength. They had built their space program to look peaceful and primitive while hiding incredible military power. "Look at this quote," Marcus said, pointing to the screen. "If we appear too powerful, they might strike first out of fear. If we appear too weak, they might strike first out of greed. We must find the balance, appear just strong enough to make them pause, but keep our true strength hidden until it's needed." Thomas read it and shook his head in amazement. "They planned all this before they even knew we existed." "They planned it before they left their own planet," Marcus replied. "Everything, the hidden weapons, the masked technology, even their warning to us, it was all part of a strategy developed before they built their first space station." He put down the datapad and looked at the tactical display, showing the remnants of the once mighty Imperial fleet. "We thought we were testing them," he said quietly. "But they were testing us, and we failed." The Imperial Senate chamber was silent as Marcus walked to the central speaking platform. Thousands of senators from across the empire sat in the curved rows that rose up like a mountain around him. Many wore the traditional robes of their home worlds, creating a sea of colors that would normally look beautiful. Today, they just looked afraid. The empire faces a choice. Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. We can continue this war and be destroyed, or we can change. Not just our actions, but who we are as a civilization. He pressed a button, and the chamber's massive displays lit up with images from their battles with humanity. The senators watched in silence as Imperial ships were systematically defeated, disabled, and captured. For centuries, we believed our technology made us superior, Marcus continued. We thought our right to rule came from our strength, but we never faced a species like humanity before. He showed them the decoded documents about human preparations, their careful planning, their hidden strength. The senators murmured as they realized the truth. Humanity had outplanned them long before they had even met. Look at these casualty reports, Marcus said, bringing up new data. They could have killed millions of our people. Instead, they disabled our ships with precision strikes. Their rescue ships saved our crews. Even in victory, they chose mercy over vengeance. General Reed stood up from his seat. They humiliated us. They destroyed centuries of imperial power. No, Marcus replied firmly. They stopped us from destroying ourselves. Look at our history. Every species we conquered made us stronger for a while, but each conquest made us more feared, more hated. We were building our own downfall. The displays changed to show the human terms of peace. They were surprisingly simple. The empire could keep its current territory, but had to stop expanding through conquest. They would have to establish a council with their current subject species, giving them real power in imperial decisions. The humans aren't trying to destroy the empire, Marcus explained. They're trying to transform it, from a force that rules through fear into something greater, a true federation of species working together. An older senator stood up. Why should we trust them? How do we know this isn't a trick to weaken us? Marcus smiled slightly. Because they already proved they can destroy us anytime they want. Their mercy isn't weakness, it's strength. They're strong enough that they don't need to prove anything. He brought up one final document. The transcript of his private meeting with Admiral Walker the day before. The humans told me something important, Marcus said. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want anyone to rule it. We just want to make sure no one species ever threatens the peace of all others again. The chamber erupted in discussion. Marcus waited patiently until they quieted down. We have two paths before us, he continued. We can reject their terms and be remembered as the empire that was too proud to change. Or we can help build something new. A galaxy where strength comes from cooperation, not conquest. The vote took hours. Marcus watched as senators argued, debated, and finally made their choice. In the end, it wasn't even close. The empire would accept humanity's terms. Later that day, Marcus stood with Admiral Walker as they watched the peace accords being signed. Imperial officials sat beside representatives from their former subject species, working out the details of their new relationship. You knew we would choose peace, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Walker nodded. We studied your history. The empire was built by people who wanted order in the galaxy. Somewhere along the way, you forgot that order doesn't have to come from fear. Marcus thought about the warning humanity had given them, so simple yet so profound. Run, he said quietly. That's what you told us. But you didn't mean run away, did you? No, Walker replied. We meant run toward something better. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning a war. It's in preventing one from ever being necessary. Together, they watched as the first page of the empire's new history was written.